was alone at the house.
And that's the last anyone knows of Meredith Kircher. They saw blood everywhere and they screamed.
Is this the usual case of suicide? No, this is a murder.
This was a sex game gone wrong.
They interviewed her for the next 5 days. They weren't looking for the truth.
What do you mean she's been charged with a murder?
The media liked the idea that such a pretty, smart girl could kill another very pretty and smart girl.
I'm still asking what happened to Meredith Kircher.
Perugia, Italy. A medieval hill town in the heart of Umbria.
Perugia is very old, so it has layers of history and these little streets that, tangle up and you kind of feel lost.
A Renaissance city steeped in culture.
It's got 2 universities. One of them caters to Italians who come to Perugia to study. The other one caters to international students.
It's full of young people. It's a city that is very alive.
This magnificent setting is also the backdrop for a squalid tale of sex and murder that grips 2 continents. All Souls Day. The universities are closed. Across the city, people gather to remember the dead.
A woman was checking her roses early one morning and heard the squeal of a cell phone.
She found 2 cell phones. Clearly someone had thrown them into her garden. She called the postal police, and the postal police came to get them.
Rather than taking those cell phones, taking them to the police station to see what might have happened, they thought, let's see if we can return it. They were able to trace one of the numbers to the Via della Pergola.
As the postal police follow up the cell phone lead, the regular police receive a phone call about a break-in at the same address.
So they drove into the yard of Via della Pergola and they found Raffaele Sollecito and Amanda Knox outside the house.
20-year-old Amanda Knox is an American student who shares the house with 3 other young women. Raffaele Sollecito, 23, also a student, is her Italian boyfriend.
The minute that they saw that there was a broken window and that a potential crime had been committed, they called the police, the regular police.
The cell phones belong to Knox's roommate, Meredith Kircher. The door to Meredith's room is locked, and she is nowhere to be found.
One of the roommate's boyfriends and friends had arrived on the scene. The police said to the guys, well, we can't break down the door, but you can break down the door.
They find this unbelievable sight of Meredith's body.
Blood is everywhere. The young woman's throat has been slashed.
This is a small town by any standard of measure. They're not used to these types of bloody murders. They're not used to these types of crime.
Meredith Kircher was a British exchange student studying politics at Perugia's University for Foreigners. She'd been in Italy just 8 weeks.
There are sirens and cop cars and people coming in and phone calls being made.
This is a huge crime. As soon as the police arrives, the media is there.
Leading the investigation is Magistrate Giuliano Mignini.
chiesi, ma è un...
I asked, is this the usual case of suicide or accidental death? No, this is a murder.
Mi portarono nella stanza del...
The room where the murder took place was smeared with blood.
imbrattata di sangue e c'era...
And there was this duvet.
...che copriva il cadavere.
A pillow is propped under her hips. There's bruising on her legs, and her bra is ripped into pieces.
Il ricordo che ho appunto che era...
The girl was half undressed.
ragazza aveva...
Because of this, we thought right away it was a sex crime.
un reato a sfondo sessuale. La lesione maggiore è quella che era...
The biggest wound was on the left side of her neck. It was very deep,
che era molto profonda.
7 or 8 centimeters.
Centimetri. È rimasto impresso questa...
What stuck in my head
una mano
was this bloody handprint on the wall
che era stato lasciato sul muro, sulla parete.
in front of the entrance door.
On Meredith's bed is the outline of what could be the murder weapon. And in the bathroom, even more blood.
Sul miscelatore della
On the faucet of the sink, they found a spot of blood
di sangue.
and 2 other spots in the sink. The spots were quite fresh.
E poi nel...
And in the bathroom used by the Italian girls, we found feces.
rimaste delle feci.
Whoever left them hadn't flushed the toilet.
C'erano rimaste delle feci.
Detectives worked to piece together Meredith's last hours alive. The attractive 21-year-old spent the evening with some British girlfriends.
And they have dinner, they eat pizza together. But they're all rather tired, so they all decide that they're going to have an early night.
Meredith walks home at around 9 p.m., the last 5 minutes by herself.
It's not a dangerous part of town, but it is very much out of the way. It's not on a street by any other houses.
Police discover that Kircher's 2 Italian housemates were away with their families. Amanda Knox says she spent the night at her boyfriend's apartment 10 minutes away.
Nobody called Meredith that night to see if she'd made it home. Nobody checked up on her. And that's the last anyone knows of Meredith Kircher.
From day one, investigators are suspicious of Meredith's housemate, Amanda Knox.
Nella piazzola c'erano questi...
In the clearing in front of the house, there were 2 young people, Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito.
che stavano lì, si abbracciavano.
They were embracing and hugging, as if to give each other courage.
Di coraggio.
She was in shock. She was crying. I mean, her friend was dead. It was awful.
Still, Mignini thinks it's a strange way of behaving for someone whose roommate's half-naked body has just been discovered. Her alibi is weak, too. She says she and her boyfriend were on his computer much of that evening. But a check shows no activity after 9:15 p.m. What unfolds next is a lurid theory of lust and murder, and the police investigation puts the beautiful American at its center. Overnight, news of the murder of British exchange student Meredith Kircher turns life in the sleepy university town of Perugia upside down.
Nobody knew who had killed Meredith, so girls were scared. Who knew who this person that killed her? Could he kill somebody else?
And the police needed to find a culprit fast.
Details of the crime are splashed across TV and newspapers. The house at 7 Via della Pergola is dubbed a house of horrors. In London, the story sets off alarm bells for one journalist, Meredith Kircher's father.
It was the most horrible thing. He learns initially that it's a British girl that was killed.
John Kircher calls his daughter's cell phone over and over again. No answer. Hours later, a colleague at the Daily Mirror tells him the victim's name is indeed Meredith. The youngest of 4 children, studying in Italy was a dream come true for Meredith. Her family says she was excited about improving her Italian and making new friends. She chose Perugia because it was safe. One day after Halloween, Meredith's dream turned into a nightmare.
Meg, as she was fondly known to us and those who knew her, was someone very special. As anyone who had been lucky enough to have known her would testify, she was one of the most beautiful, intelligent, witty and caring people you could wish to meet.
The autopsy shows that Meredith Kircher's throat was slashed with a knife blow so powerful it severed a major artery.
The most serious wounds on Meredith's body were to her throat. 2 on the left side, 1 on the right. The blood from her most serious neck wound could have caused her to drown in her own blood.
She couldn't scream for help. She couldn't move. It was an agonizing death.
The body was naked from the torso down, so it was possible to hypothesize that there might have been a sexual assault, or at least an attempt of a sexual assault.
A small amount of male DNA is found inside Meredith's body. At first glance, it looks like Meredith's killer broke in through a bedroom window at the front of the house. But the evidence doesn't stack up.
Ci è sembrata inverosimile che un lato.
It seemed unlikely that a burglar would have picked that wall. So visible from the road and the parking lot.
La strada anche esposta al parcheggio.
Investigators find a rock on the floor next to the shattered glass. But how someone threw that rock through that window puzzles magistrate Giuliano Mignini.
Ci sembrava strano che dall'esterno
someone had to stand there,
appostare,
take a rock and hit the small space between the shutters.
He also finds it odd that nothing in that room is missing.
Questa cosa non è credibile.
It just didn't seem possible. It seemed staged.
If the break-in was faked, maybe there was no intruder after all. The chief investigator thinks Meredith knew her killer or killers, and sex was the motive.
The police and the prosecutor believed that this was a sex-fueled orgy the night that Meredith was killed. They don't believe it was a one-person killing. They believed it was a group killing. So Amanda was always seen as the one involved. She just fitted the bill.
For investigators, Amanda Knox and her boyfriend, Raffaele Sollecito, fit the bill for many reasons.
The police suspected Amanda and Raffaele from almost that very first day because of their behavior outside of the crime scene.
There are a lot of pictures of Raffaele and Amanda outside kissing.
And because the friends of the Italian girls who also lived in the house were telling the police, listen, something's not right.
According to her roommates, Amanda had more than one man come through her bedroom.
She's someone that boys would look at. That's something also that there'd be a lot of people who maybe would dislike her, or some of the other girls who could be jealous of her because of that. So, you know, she had this dual side, if you like, you know, very open, good-looking, but also a little bit too boisterous, if you like. She was depicted as if she had come over to Italy and was finally free to go out with every single guy that she met.
The police also get an earful from the British girls.
Amanda was messy. She didn't clean the bathroom. She left the vibrator and condoms under the sink of the bathroom.
She was certainly not a quiet person. She's not someone who would go unnoticed. She's the kind of girl that you either love or hate.
They talked about how she was very loud, how she would dominate a conversation.
There was tension between the two girls. Tension that came from their different personal habits. Meredith expressed a certain intolerance towards Amanda.
Meredith Kircher's friends all believe that Amanda Knox had something to do with Meredith's murder.
Adding fuel to the fire, Knox and Solecito are seen having a romantic dinner and shopping for sexy lingerie just days after Meredith's death.
In the context of a murder, seemed very inappropriate to the Italians and very inappropriate to the police.
Detectives are convinced that Knox is hiding something.
Tornammo di nuovo nella casa.
We took Amanda back to the house. We were looking at the knives in the kitchen.
Nella cucina. Amanda ebbe una reazione.
Amanda got deeply upset. She brought her hands to her ears, like this, as if she didn't want to hear something.
2 days into their investigation, the Perugia police believe a toxic mix of sex and animosity led to Meredith Kircher's homicide. Then, prime suspect Amanda Knox makes a shocking confession and accuses someone else of the murder. Three days after Meredith Kircher was found dead in her bedroom, her throat cut, students in Perugia hold a candlelight vigil in memory of the 21-year-old British exchange student. The Italian police's prime suspect, Amanda Knox, doesn't attend. Overnight, the American student has become an international media sensation, followed everywhere by a swarm of journalists.
I camion delle televisioni erano dappertutto.
The television trucks were everywhere. The journalists were everywhere. They went a little too far.
The journalists were literally running all over into the pubs, into the clubs, at the universities, questioning students to find out things, juicy stuff to publish.
British reporters discover that Knox calls herself Foxy Knoxy on Facebook, an innocent childhood nickname. Retooled for the tabloid headlines, Foxy Knoxy takes on a much different connotation. The Italian media go even further, painting Knox as a depraved man-eater, the Black Widow.
The media likes the idea that such a pretty, smart girl could kill another very pretty and smart girl for a sexual reason. The person that gives the journalist the story is Amanda, not Raffaele. Raffaele is collateral damage.
To her family in Seattle, Knox is their naive, blue-eyed daughter caught up in a nightmare on the other side of the world.
She's a great kid. She'd be a child that any parent would want to have.
The best words I can think for her are creative, original, loving, caring, kind. She's one of those people who will genuinely stop you in the street and go, "How are you?" and really mean it. I know my sister is quirky. She's her own person. She does what she thinks is fun. She'll smile, she'll laugh, she'll sing walking down the street. And there's nothing wrong with being quirky.
Knox's mother encouraged her daughter to study abroad.
We had been to Italy, and she loved the architecture and the history and the culture. She'd been talking about that forever.
Arriving in Perugia at the end of the summer, it only takes a few days for her to find the perfect place to live.
Looking over a valley, kind of fairy tale little house. Amanda loved it immediately. And I heard a lot about Meredith and that she was a sweet girl. It sounded like a really fun place that they were living at.
I worried about Amanda only because she was such a trusting, kind of naive person. You know, the world was this beautiful place, and everybody in it was beautiful, and I always worried about her, you know, walking home alone late at night because she just didn't see the world as a dangerous, bad place.
About a week before the murder, Knox's family started hearing about Raffaella Solecito. a 23-year-old engineering student from an affluent family in the south of Italy.
I think she had a small little boy crush on him.
She's drawn to kind of quieter, more intellectual types, and so he seemed to fit the bill.
Investigators have a radically different take on Knox's new beau.
Because Raffaele was a knife collector, because he had dressed for Halloween wrapped in surgical bandages, carrying a meat cleaver, they were able to picture him as maybe a more deviant character.
On his blog, Sollecito writes about longing for extreme experiences.
This is an example of how certain things can be taken out of context and used against them.
Detectives wonder if killing Kircher in a drug and sex-fueled frenzy is the ultimate thrill for the hedonistic couple.
November 5th, 2007, Raffaele Sollecito was called into the police station for questioning.
It's 10:15 p.m., 4 days after the murder, and Knox tags along. The police take Sollecito into a back room and turn up the heat, asking him again about the night of the murder. He tells them that Amanda planned to work her regular shift at a local bar that evening. Her plans changed.
Amanda Knox got a text message that said she didn't have to come into the bar. Things were slow. They watched a movie, you know, made dinner, made love, took a shower. It was a very romantic, intimate evening, according to their recollection of it.
The hours wear on, and so do the questions.
They were questioning him pretty hard, and he was breaking in the eyes of the interrogators. He was saying certain things that were knocking down her alibi.
Cambiò versione rispetto a quello che aveva.
He changed the story about being with Amanda.
Che era stato insieme con Amanda, eccetera.
He said,
no, io ero stato.
I was at home, but Amanda left the house and came back at 1 a.m.
Alle 1. Cioè lui disse
He said, I lied before, but now I'm telling the truth.
It's a major admission, and the police know that if Knox loses her alibi, Sollecito loses his too. Now it's Knox's turn to answer some searching questions.
They called her into the back room. They said, you know, what do you think really happened? How did this murder take place?
She insists that she spent the entire night at Sollecito's. Detectives tell her that her boyfriend has betrayed her. On her cell phone, they find the text she sent to her boss, Patrick Lumumba, on the evening of November 1st. Something in the message sets off alarm bells.
Amanda wrote him back a note and said, ci vediamo, which is, you know, see you later, see you soon. Amanda had no intention of seeing Patrick that night, but the way she wrote the message implied that she did.
Inspectors already suspect she and her boyfriend are involved in Meredith's murder. Now they believe there is a third person. Almost 5 hours into her interrogation, she breaks down.
And that's when she says that, yes, she had seen Patrick. She had met him in front of the University for Foreigners by the basketball court, and they had gone to the house together.
It's a devastating confession.
She places herself in the house.
And then goes one step further.
She said that Patrick Lumumba killed Meredith Kircher.
Amanda Knox piangendo, mi pare mettendo.
Amanda Knox was crying and doing this gesture of putting her hands over her ears. As of that moment, we had very precise testimony against Lumumba.
Patrick Lumumba is a local musician and owner of Le Chic, the bar where Knox works. On the night of the murder, a couple reported seeing a black man running near Meredith's house. Police now think it was Lumumba.
sulla base degli elementi che avevamo
based on the information we had at that time, the contradictory statements from Amanda, and the changes in Raffaele's story,
di Raffaele.
I ordered them arrested.
4 days after Meredith Kircher's murder, the Perugia police have 3 prime suspects and a sensational theory as to how she died. But can they prove it? As autumn settles over the hilltop town of Perugia, an American student and her Italian lover have been arrested for the slaying of British student Meredith Kircher. Under questioning, Amanda Knox says she didn't kill her roommate. She says it was her boss, bar owner Patrick Lumumba, an immigrant from the Congo.
I woke up very early and I heard a voice of a woman saying, "Police, police, open." They kept on telling me, "You know what you did. Why did you do it? What did I do?"
The 38-year-old Lumumba admits he knew Meredith from his bar.
She was always with this group of British friends. You could tell she was a friendly person.
The police think Lumumba wanted more than friendship with Meredith.
I said, "Why kill a girl to make love to her? For what reason?" And they said, "Maybe there are thrill seekers." And I said, "You're crazy."
Knox, Solecito, and Lumumba are paraded in front of the police station for the world's media.
An officer asked me, "You want something to cover your face?" And I said, "No, I have nothing to hide."
It was a juicy story for the media. An American pretty girl, her handsome Italian boyfriend, and this Congolese musician that everybody in Perugia adored.
Amanda Knox was having the time of her life in Italy, but Italian police have now linked the Seattle student to her roommate's murder.
6,000 miles away, Amanda Knox's family learn of her arrest.
We were just flabbergasted. I mean, it's like, what do you mean she's been charged with a murder?
Investigators found the 21-year-old half naked, her throat slashed. And Amanda Knox and her Italian boyfriend were in the middle of the bizarre murder investigation.
You heard on the news. That's how we were informed.
It's like, okay, there's just got to be a mistake somewhere.
Knox's mother flies to Perugia to be by her daughter's side.
She didn't understand how this was happening to her. She was mostly confused. She was devastated by the loss of her friend, and that really hadn't even sunk in. And then she had been kept in solitary. She said she pretty much curled up into a ball and just cried. The worst part is when they take her away and you watch the doors close. It was horrible. The hardest thing I've ever had to do.
The picture that was painted of her was so completely opposite of who she really truly is. And just all of the misinformation and the twisting of information.
While Knox's family is vocal about their daughter's innocence, the Kirchers keep a low profile. The media, however, is relentless.
It was a hunt for the scoop of the biggest story in Italy, England, and America.
Reporters track down witnesses who claim they have information about the murder.
One of them is a homeless man who lived in the basketball court right above the murder house.
Antonio Curatolo, in his 50s, is a fixture in a park known for drug dealing.
He saw Amanda Knox and Raffaele Solecito peering over a fence down at the house in what would have been in the hours around midnight after the murder would have occurred.
But the police need more than a sighting to build their case. And so far, they have no hard evidence to connect Knox, Solecito, or Lumumba to the murder. They search Solecito's apartment and find a shoe that seems to match a bloody footprint found at the crime scene. And a knife, suggesting Amanda Knox wielded the murder weapon.
Sul coltello è stata evidenziata.
On the knife blade, they found evidence of genetic material, DNA, apparently belonging to the victim. And on the handle, material belonging to Amanda.
The proud police declare caso chiuso, case closed.
At this point, everybody was believing it.
However, a gaping hole appears in the case against Patrick Lumumba. None of the forensic evidence puts him at the murder scene, and two witnesses say he was at his bar all night.
Abbiamo capito che Lumumba non è.
We found out that Lumumba wasn't possible. There wasn't enough evidence to keep him, so Lumumba was freed.
Rimesso in libertà.
Amanda Knox has accused an innocent man of murder. Her accusation only makes the police more certain she's guilty.
Why does she slander me if she has nothing to do with it? I thought that for sure she had something to do with what happened.
Knox recants her statement. She claims she was exhausted and confused and bullied by detectives.
The police called me a liar. They threatened that I was going to go in prison for 30 years because I was hiding something.
Amanda Knox said that the police hit her on the back of the head twice.
I was terrified because I didn't know. I didn't know what to do anymore.
And that's why she accused Patrick Lumumba of the murder.
They interviewed her for 40 hours over 5 days. They exhausted her over the course of the week, and they worked her all night. I could take Manini into that room and have him confess to it. It's just a matter of how long it would take.
More than 2 weeks after the murder, forensic results reveal someone else was at the house that night. Bloody fingerprints found in Meredith's room matched those of Rudy Godet, an unemployed immigrant from the Ivory Coast. It's rumored that the 20-year-old Godet deals drugs, and just 5 days before the murder, he'd been caught by police.
He was found with a stolen computer, stolen cell phone, and a knife.
Godet was also a visitor to the house.
Meredith Kirchner and Amanda Knox met Rudy Godet in the basement apartment of the house on Via della Pergola. Rudy was there. He was a frequent visitor to the house down below. He'd actually fallen asleep on the toilet one night. He'd been drunk there. He'd passed out there. He was a fixture in the house below. The boys who lived there testified to knowing him, and, you know, they'd play basketball and things like that. Rudy Godet had asked a friend of Amanda's if she was single. He seemed to express a romantic interest in her.
Fueling investigators' suspicions, Godet took off the day after the killing.
We found out that he had fled. He had left the country and was in Germany.
Godet sees his face splashed all over the news. In a panic, he calls a friend back in Italy, and the police listen in.
The friend asks Rudy, "Did you do anything? Did you kill Meredith?"
Godet admits to being at the cottage, though he claims he didn't kill Meredith. It's enough for the police. Through Interpol, he's extradited to Perugia.
Arrestato ed è stato.
He was arrested and put in jail.
Analysis shows Godet's signature is all over the crime scene.
You have Rudy's footprints. You have his bloody fingerprints on Meredith's purse. You have all these things of Rudy.
Even more damning, Godet's DNA matches the DNA found in the toilet and inside Meredith's body. Although the pathologist doesn't believe full intercourse took place, sexual foreplay between Rudy and Meredith did. Whether it was consensual isn't clear.
Era un elemento decisivo, insomma, molto.
This was important evidence.
Che collocava
It placed Rudy Gade at the crime scene.
del delitto.
Thought, thank goodness, they finally found the culprit. You know, now they'll let Amanda go.
Knox and Sollecito remain behind bars. Under Italian law, suspects can be kept in prison without formal charges for up to a year.
Ed esigenze cautelari.
We kept them in jail because we were convinced if they were freed, they would have talked to each other and compromised the investigation.
Physical evidence placing Knox and Sollecito at the crime scene is controversial. The trace of Meredith's DNA found on the knife from Sollecito's kitchen is so tiny, it's open to error. A defense expert says it's not the murder weapon.
La ferita più grande presenta delle caratteristiche che
The largest wound shows, with absolute certainty,
compatibilità
it was not made with the knife taken into evidence.
con le ferite stesse.
Meredith's blood found in the bathroom also contained Knox's DNA. The prosecution thinks that ties Knox directly to the murder.
Everybody has their DNA scattered throughout their house, on floors, walls, anywhere where there's dust. It proves nothing.
Finally, Meredith Kircher's bra clasp contained a mixed DNA sample, some of which belonged to Sollecito. This, too, is debatable.
It wasn't picked up until 6 weeks after the first pieces of evidence had been collected.
A police video of the crime scene sparks allegations that investigators accidentally contaminated key evidence like the bra strap.
They picked up one sample and they didn't change gloves when they picked up a second sample. Now, all of those things work against the sanctity of the crime scene.
It could be that the people who collected the bra clasp used the handle of the door to get into the room that Raphael had used trying to break the door down.
In the case against Amanda Knox and Raphael Sollecito, there is no smoking gun. The forensic case against Rudy Gade is rock solid. And now that he's in jail, Gade wants to talk. He says he knows who really killed Meredith Kircher. Police in Perugia, Italy, have 3 people in custody for the murder of 21-year-old Meredith Kircher. Suspect Rudy Gade, the immigrant from the Ivory Coast, admits he was with Meredith the night she died.
He says that he went to Meredith's house because she invited him. He had a date with her.
She let him in. They were starting to make out a little bit. He maintains that neither of them had a condom, so they slowed things down. He had eaten a kebab that didn't quite sit right with him. He was in the bathroom. He heard an argument, and then he says he hears Meredith scream. He says he comes out of the bathroom, which is why he didn't flush the toilet, because it was such a panic situation.
At first, Gade claims an unknown assassin killed Meredith. As the months go by, his story changes. Now he says he saw a man who looked just like Raphael Sollecito.
And then he points his finger at Amanda. He says he saw a girl leave the house.
He says he went to Meredith's room, found her bleeding to death, took a towel, put it on the wound of her neck, and panicked.
Afraid that the police would blame him, Gade claims he had no choice but to flee. The magistrate has his own theory of the murder. According to him, it all came down to lust.
Prosecution believes that all three of the perpetrators were in the room when Meredith Kircher was killed.
On the night of November 1st, they allege Knox brought Solecito and Gaudet back to the flat. High on drugs, they were looking for action and hoped Meredith would provide it.
In the prosecutor's mind, this was a sex game gone wrong that started innocently and ended violently. He believed that Amanda directed Rudy and Raffaele to sexually violate Meredith and to kill her.
When they realized what they had done, all three fled the scene. Within hours, Gaudet is on his way to Germany. The police believe that Knox and Solecito returned to the cottage to fake a break-in. They ditch Meredith's cell phones in a nearby garden, as though they had been stolen during the break-in. Months after Meredith's murder, prosecutors charge Rudy Gaudet with murder, sexual assault, and theft. The Ivory Coast immigrant asks for a fast-track trial. In October 2008, he is convicted and sentenced to 30 years in prison.
Today's been really important in our steps towards justice for Meredith, so all we can do is just wait, really, and see what happens.
The other prime suspects, Amanda Knox and her lover, Rafael Solecito, are now charged with the same crimes. While the case against Gaudet was strong, the one against Knox and Solecito has its flaws.
Lecito e Amanda Amanda abbiano partecipato.
Solecito and Amanda were placed at the crime scene based on minuscule pieces of evidence.
Siano stati così bravi.
Either they were flying or they were as expert as James Bond to be able to remove all traces of themselves from the room.
A pulire dalla stanza tutte le loro tracce.
It stretches the imagination to put these two young people in that room.
Voler mettere i due ragazzi all'interno della stanza.
The defense team argues the three main pieces of forensic evidence against the couple are highly questionable. And so is the credibility of the homeless man, Antonio Curatolo. The Italian prosecutor stands his ground.
Le prove scientifiche.
The scientific evidence confirmed our theory. The knife. The traces of blood in the bathroom. The DNA on the bra clasp. Based on all these results, we came to our conclusions.
Many Americans believe Knox and Solecito are innocent. In Italy, it's a different story.
In a country like this, it's not really about proving guilt, it's about proving innocence.
For some, the lurid murder is emblematic of a generation out of control.
People wanted to solve this. They wanted to believe that the police had done a good job. In their minds, Amanda was guilty even before the evidence got presented in court.
January 2009, Assistant Prosecutor Giuliano Mignini lays out his case before 2 judges and 6 jurors. He argues that Knox's own words reveal her guilt.
Her accusation against Patrick Lumumba and her confession to being in the house at the time of the murder, that ended up being admissible in court. The jury heard all of that.
It wasn't Amanda's behavior as much as her statements, which contained many contradictions.
The prosecution, no matter how far-fetched it might be, seemed to have a steady theme where the defense was a little bit more disjointed. The prosecutor knew his jury. I think he knew that most of the people in the jury had read all of the headlines about what happened in their town. I think that he really played on Amanda Knox, the, angel-faced devil, and all of these things that were in the headlines. The way he spoke to the jury, the way he presented his case was very specific to the people in the town where he lives.
They spent an exorbitant amount of time on Amanda's personality, her behavior, and then they spent a very short period of time dealing with the forensic evidence in the case.
Prosecutors never establish a clear motive for the murder.
Purtroppo esistono dei delitti che...
Unfortunately, there are crimes where the motive is never found.
The defense tries to prove that Cadet acted alone, breaking into the apartment and surprising Meredith. It doesn't work. December 2009, the court finds Amanda Knox and Rafael Solecito guilty of sexual assault, theft, and murder.
I stood in the courtroom and I tried to make eye contact with each one of the jurors. None of them would look up. None of them. And in my heart, I believe they think this is wrong. But they convicted her based on what they had heard in the press.
The review court judge, the Supreme Court judge, the criminal court judge, all of the assessments of the judges were the same.
Rafael Solecito is sentenced to 25 years. Amanda Knox gets 26 years, an extra year for slandering Lumumba. But it's not over. Knox is facing new slander charges from the police who deny hitting her. Meanwhile, an appeal of the two murder convictions is underway in Perugia.
I'm innocent. I'm not the person that the prosecutor says I am. Meredith was my friend, and I would never have hurt her.
Amanda could have been home alone that night, and then we would be the family on the other end, dealing with the loss of a child, which is beyond, I can't even imagine that.
Two mothers have lost a daughter, one in jail and the other in death.
The hardest thing to do is always to keep the focus on the victim and not on the suspect, and we should always remember that this is really about the murder of Meredith Kircher.
Meredith still leaves quite a big hole in our lives. Yeah. And her presence is missed every time we meet up as a family.